questions? Oh, there it is.
Since back to Blood Mountain, if you walk up the Blue Trail and then back onto the 18, doesn't that mean that you missed some of the 18? And therefore,
leave it to a brother to really call you.
You know, I'm glad you asked that question. Any other questions? You know, I had every intention that I would pass by every white blaze. I did not what they call slack pack. That is, slack pack is where you don't carry any weight. You don't carry your back. And there are lots and lots of opportunities to do that. And oddly enough, the Conservancy recognizes slack packing. But I think slack packing, I ain't blue blaze either. And you say, well, wait. Well, here's the way I finally defined blue blazing. I never chose a blue blaze trail. And I was never on a blue blaze trail to my advantage. That is, it made it shorter or easier. There. That was my rationalization.
How often did you sleep in your tent?
I probably slept in it 15 or 20 times. I much prefer to sleep in shelters because I wanted to meet people and I wanted to talk to people. I wanted to visit with people. And when there are plenty of opportunities to camp somewhere by yourself. I often tented with other people. I tented with the Vikings several times and with some other campers, and sometimes alone. I was sometimes alone in shelters, but not very often. But I often stayed in shelters. I more often stayed in shelters because I wanted to be with other people. Also, there was water there. And not that there's no water elsewhere, but some stretches of the AT, water's a little scarce, but not at shelters.
I want to remind everybody that the Appalachian Trail magazine is back there, and it has a picture of Robert Redford and Nick Nolte about the movie that's coming out, so you might want to see it.
Yes, sir.
What was the item that you forgot when you started?
Well, I revamped my pack altogether after I got some more experience, but not for lack of trying to prepare it correctly. But I carried a homemade alcohol stove, which works just fine in the summertime. It don't work so well in the wintertime, and it doesn't work at all when the weather's in the single digits. So one of the reasons I was eating so little in the first days of my hike, partly I just didn't have any appetite, but the other part was I didn't have a stove. I couldn't heat up anything anyway until I was able to buy a pocket. I have a pocket rocket at home, but I wasn't at home, and I bought a pocket rocket type stove, which you can see by there. That's one of the things. But I also was, I didn't have anything to put on my boots. I didn't have any, and I never got any camp shoes, which when I got up to north, Maine does not believe in bridging anything. So you have to wade through all the rivers, and some of them are quite dangerous, I think. One of them, I came to a river one day, and I don't have pictures of most of the most dangerous thing because I was so afraid. It wasn't picture taking time. I came to a river up there that I took one look at it, and a number of times I would say, you just can't be serious about this. This is some kind of a joke, but it wasn't a joke. You rock hopped out to the middle of the river, and then they had a 12-inch plank that was 12 feet long, stretched across a rapid, sitting on these two boulders, and about this much of the plank is on the boulder. And the first thing you wonder is, how much do I weigh? Am I going to squish this board down enough so it's going to fall off? But then you say to yourself, look, thousands of people have done this. You can do it too. So you just sort of suck it up and get out on the plank and go. I had to, when I got to Gatlinburg, I really got me some winter gear. I got a fleece jacket, which I didn't have. I got some spikes in Gatlinburg. I got a stove in Gatlinburg and so on and so forth. I had spent a lot of time. I had 8 section hikes behind me, so I had some experience. And I had read a number of books and taken notes from them on what to do. And I was particularly with my tool. I had a really good toolbox. I had an excellent toolbox.
I may have missed this, but what was your motivation for going?
Well, it's really funny. I don't like to hike. And not at first I didn't. And I finally liked it to the point where I enjoyed hiking the first few hours of the morning. I really did enjoy it. I looked forward to getting my pack on and getting on the trail. By noontime, I probably had enough for the day, even at the end of the hike. But I wanted to see if I could do it, I guess. Yeah, I just, I had hiked section hikes, and I saw other through hikers, and I wondered if I could do it. And in my head, I knew I could. But telling yourself something and doing something is two different things. It's just not the same thing at all. So it's sort of like, well, let's find out. Let's just find out. So I did. One of the advantages I think that old people, and maybe the only advantage that old people have over young people on the trail, and the trail is eat up with young people, is that even if we've had blessed lives, and I have, you've encountered a lot of difficulties that they have not seen yet. They will, but they've not seen them yet, and you've overcome them. And so when you have crummy days, or your feet hurt, your back hurts, you just say to yourself, look, I've seen a lot worse than this. And some of those people haven't. That's the biggest advantage you have.
Lucky, a comment rather than a question. You touched on this a few minutes ago, but I want to go back and touch on it again. Trail started open in 1935. That's 65, 70, 80 years ago. And according to the Conservancy, Lucky is the 25th person to through hike the Appalachian Trail after the age of 70. Wow. 25th.
One of the funny things about the trail is you can be hiking along in a section that you think is really difficult. And here comes a day hiker towards you wearing flip-flops. And it drives home the point that there's really, for somebody in reasonable shape, let's say that they could, on a flat ground, they can walk 5 miles. And they can do 2 pull-ups. They can hike almost any portion of the AT. So it's not that any particular portion, although some of them seem really difficult to me, it can't be overcome. They can, and by a person that's not in really good shape. What gets you is not the one little section. It's the section after section after section after day after day after day. That's what gets you. Not I can't climb this rock wall. You come to these rock walls, and the first ones you see, it's sort of like, what in the world? And there's the white blaze right in the middle of it. They expect you to climb this thing. You get to looking at it, and you see a little, maybe a little crack this wide. Well, you can put your foot on that, and then, there's a place I can put my hand. You can grab, and then there's another foothold, and pretty soon you're up it and over it and on to the next one. So it's not the one that gets you. It's just all of them stacked on one on another. The first one I ever climbed, I was really disgusted to get right down to it. And I wrote in the blog, I thought it was really dangerous. It was dangerous. And if you slip, you're going to intensive care, you're going to the morgue. And when I got through with it, I thought, shouldn't I feel happy or proud, or I felt like an idiot. I had risked my life, and for what? That was the first one. But after a while, you sort of get used to them, and you get a little better at them, too.
You carried a phone or anything?
Yes, I did. I had an iPhone, and I also had a auxiliary battery. And power was almost never a problem for me, though I think I was out, the longest I was out where I couldn't recharge was 9 days. But I kept it, I kept it off a lot. And, you can't use it a lot of times anyway. You can't get any service, especially after you get north of Virginia. I had Verizon. Verizon was very good in the south, but not so good in the north. But I did carry an iPhone, and I stayed in touch with my wife and my son who was editing the blog, and to a good extent with Dave.
Was that your sleeping tent?
Huh?
Was that your sleeping tent?
Yes, this is my tent, and it worked beautifully. And this is a summer bag in it. The winter bag is back there. This is actually not a bag; it's a quilt. And you can see it doesn't have a zipper on it; it's down, and there's a pad in there that's a 3/4 length. Most people carried heavier pads that looked a lot more comfortable than mine, but I like mine and never changed out. So yeah, it wouldn't look quite like that set up. It would look a little larger because it would have stakes on it out. I can't stake them in here, but it would have stakes that would pull the sides out somewhat.
Knowing that you lost as much weight as you did you gain weight before you started, knowing you were going to lose that kind of weight?
Yes and no. When I first started getting in shape, I weighed 222, and I lost down to 192, and then I thought, what are you doing? You need some, what are you doing? So I gained 10 pounds, and I started at 202. The least I ever weighed, it was a phony weight because I was so dehydrated. I know better than to race, but I did sometimes, and this was an old guy, and I won't let him beat me. And if you stop for water, it's like a race car stopping for gas. So I don't want to stop for water. So at one time I weighed 170. That's the least I weighed. So from the time I started training to that's not a real weight, because that was the day I only ate the piece of hard candy and a little package and I hiked a long way. I was dehydrated in the whole 40 yards. But that's down 52. Can't.
Burger King.
We went to Boston that night.
We took you to Subway.
We went to Subway. But I'd eaten the night before. I got off the trail on the 14th. I had planned to summit on the 15th because that's when Dave and Donna and Kathy were going to get there. And so I didn't want to hang around a day and up there. So I took a day off in Munson. The only day off I took just to play around on the entire hike, and I did it so I would summit on the day I wanted to. And then a couple of days later, Dave gave me a weather report that said it was going to be raining on the 15th. Now, I'm not climbing Katahdin in the rain. By that time, I had more sense than that. And so now I didn't want to wait around another day. So now the object was, let's double down and get there a day early. So we hiked the woman I hiked with and her son. We hiked the last 73 miles in 3 days and got there, and allowed us to summit on the 14th. And that night I went to supper with Mother Nature in between and a couple of other through hikers who had summited that day. And we went to a restaurant, and I was already in a mode, I got to start cutting back right now, because I don't want to go back to 222, though I don't want to. So I need to start breaking myself, and I need to start right now. So that night after I ate and supper, I only had one milkshake and one piece of pie with which I thought was pretty good. It was a lot of restraint. I was still hungry. Huh?
Have you stayed in touch with some of the people from the hike?
Yes, I have. I've stayed in touch with Temper. In fact, I'm going to try to be Temper's trail angel when she comes through North Carolina. She's a flip-flopper. And she and her boyfriend, Scott, are hiking. In fact, today's the 29th. They started today from Harper's Ferry, and they're hiking south. And when they get to Robbinsville, North Carolina, I'm going to try to provide them some trail angel help. I've also stayed in touch with Vikings. Who sent me a picture of their wedding, and it's on that bulletin board over there, and she's in her wedding gown. They're a wonderful couple. I'm crazy about them. And they had a most unusual wedding, though. They didn't invite anybody to their wedding. Their wedding, they were alone on the top of a mountain. I mean, she had a wedding gown and all, but it was him and her and the preacher and the photographer, their witness. And then they came down off the mountain, and they had a huge reception with their friends and all. And they showed the movie of their wedding, but they were married alone on the mountain. That picture you see of them, that includes the wedding party, which is 0. Okay, well, yeah.
What's next?
Well, not another through hike of the AT, that's for certain. I'm a little bit, I don't know. I'll probably go do a little section hiking with friends or grandchildren next year. But I've hiked out west before. In years gone by, I hiked rim to rim in the Grand Canyon, which is really a terrific hike. It's only 3 days, and it's wonderful, and it's a lot of scenery. I've also hiked in the Escalante River Valley, which is in southern Utah. And it was a short hike, and it was just terrific. I really enjoyed it. It was 3 or 4 days, and it was, the scenery is, I'm a southerner. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. I've always lived in the South, and that's it for me. But the West has got us beat to death when it comes to scenery on a hike. That's all there is to it. So I would like to hike the John Muir Trail, which is it goes through the Yosemite, and it's for somebody. I could hike it in 3 weeks, so it's not like it's not like 150 days, which is what this one was. And I would like to do that. Whether I ever will or not is I don't know. It's intriguing to me. It's tempting. That's about my limit. People have asked me, well, how did Donna do when you were gone? And let me report, she did quite well. She went on a cruise with one of our granddaughters. She went to Myrtle Beach on how many times exactly to see her longtime friend down there? How many times she went down there is a state secret. And but the real evidence is on this map over here. We got this map before I left of the trail, and you can see all these stickers at the bottom. That's where Springer is. When I first left, she was putting every little note about where I was. But as I went up the trail, you can see. And by the time I got to New Hampshire, there's this gaping hole. I say. She also told me when we were in our 30s, the money was in short supply, and so we didn't eat out very much. And one time we ate out, and she took a camera with us, and she had this stranger take a picture of us in front of this restaurant to prove to her friends that her husband did so take her out to eat. Well, things got a little better. Our children got grown, for one thing, and so when I left, she said, I'm going to eat out every day you're gone. Yeah.
So really, that's look on Facebook.
Huh?
Look on Facebook, you'll see what she did.
Oh, on Facebook.
Yeah.
One more comment, Pat. On behalf of the folks in Charlotte and on my Facebook page that asked for you to come down here and do this, I appreciate you coming down here to do this. And to all the folks that came in
I really appreciate y'all coming to hear the story. It's fun to talk about. It was part of it was fun to do, and I know some of you have come an awful long way, and I'm appreciative of it. Thanks.